Hello, welcome back. It's time for another episode of Leading Women into Tech. And today I want to equip you for the holidays, which is a strange thing to do maybe as a leadership podcast. But slowing down ahead of the holidays is so important for us. And I want to talk about how this is something I want you to do this year, but for every year to come. What if every January you started the day feeling restored, resilient, ready to kick ass on those goals you've got? Not burnt out, not distracted, but truly rested. So I want to talk to you today about how to get there, the power of slowing down, of building resilience this holiday season, and how some simple shifts in how you're behaving will mean that you take off in 2025. Imagine stepping into January with calmness, focused, sense of purpose, and feeling centered. It is very, very possible to feel this way, but I think so many of us rush around during the holidays. We kind of start January a little bit burnt out. Yes, we have that New Year energy, which we'll be talking about in the new year, by the way. We have that delightful New Year buzz, but there's an element of the holidays are over. I can relax. What if the holiday was fun, exciting, full of joy, but also giving you that space? Because it isn't just about rest. It's about having that foundation for resilience. And resilience is about all the joy and fun and festivities, but it's also about filling yourself back up again. And sometimes that means a little bit of slowing down. I want you, first of all, to think about the value of rest, because you might be thinking, I don't have time to slow down. I tend to hear two stories here. Either I've got so much to do for my family, or if I slow down, this stuff that needs to be done for January isn't going to get done in terms of work. So let's just take a moment and understand what rest does. Rest isn't an indulgence. It is necessary. Of course, rest starts with sleep. And I think one of the problems we have with time off and time out is we have a culture, or at least we've had a culture, I think it's changing, where sleep has seemed like a thing that we do when we fail. There's been such a culture around successful people only sleep 5 or 6 hours a night, and that's just not true. Great successful people sleep the amount of sleep they need, which is typically, for most adults, between 7.5 and 9 hours a night. Some people may need more. Very few people operate truly optimally on fewer than 7.5 hours. There are a few. Most of them have just been trained and they're not actually optimal. And it also reduces your lifespan. So when we think about rest, if we just start with sleep, we know it's not an indulgence. It's a really important time. Sleep, for example, we need deep sleep. This is when we rest, recuperate, our muscles fix. We need REM sleep when we're processing memories. We even need light sleep. I don't fully understand what light sleep is for. My ring probably tells me if I'd gone and done my research before this episode. But this episode is not about sleep, right? This episode is about the importance of rest. And we know that sleep is essential, and that is one very important form of rest. So I want you to have the mindset of rest is not an indulgence. It's necessary. If you want sustainable success, rest is important. But I want to talk about the difference between restoration and distraction. A lot of us think we're resting when we're distracted. And I'm, just as bad at this as every other person around here, right? In particular, I am the kind of person who, if I'm tired, if I'm overly tired, or I'm overcommitted, I will find myself watching television to distract myself, right? And it doesn't restore me. I will find myself running around with my friends, going to events, which fill me up, but they aren't addressing an internal need for restoration. Restoration is space to breathe, reflect, replenish. It's doing the kind of thing we do during sleep. It's rejuvenating us in some way. I think we need both, by the way. I think we need that stimulation from friends and hobbies, but I also think we need that cool, calm restoration that allows for processing and calmness and internal dialogue. If you're just surrounded by external stimuli, you aren't processing. And a huge part of slowing down without guilt is allowing yourself to restore because you are internally processing. You are healing from the day's events. The things that happened, you process them. You say, what went well? What didn't go well? How can I move forward? Instead of uncomfortable, don't want to look at it. And it's really important to understand this is not the same thing as a busy rest. A lot of us switch gears from being busy with work to being busy with something else, busy with a hobby, busy with family. And this is the problem with the holidays and why I'm recording today's episode. Because the holidays are a standard time to be busy, busy, busy personally. But we tell ourselves, one, it's necessary, and two, it's good for us because it's family, it's not work. But true resting and restoration come from a mixture of doing the things that might be busy but are exciting and engaging, but also opening up space for the inner work, the space to process, the space to heal, the space to let go of the burnout, which is very real. You are not going to let go of burnout by being busy, by the way. Even if the busy has nothing to do with the things that cause burnout, you need to process. So you need, over the holidays, to create some space, which I know can feel very daunting. And so the first thing I want to really dig into is, why do we not slow down? I want to ask you, do you slow down over the holidays from everything and not just work? If not, why not? If you do slow down over the holidays, I applaud you. Maybe continue listening to this episode, send it on to a friend. But listen for, yes, I'm going to continue doing this. If you've ever found yourself going, I can't afford to slow down, or if I stop, everything will fall apart, or I just focus on my family or personal life instead, but not myself, then there's a cost to this. There was a lady I was working with a couple of years ago now, who every holiday season, she would let go of the work, but she'd tell herself, I have to keep going and keep going and keep going. And she would come back in January exhausted. She would then use January to recover, but she was less effective. This is why she came to work with me. Her team and her family actually felt the stress of her being less effective because she'd go back in January really stressed out. She hadn't done any cognitive processing. She hadn't let go of things. She just went from one busy mode to another to another. And she'd rock up in January, burnt out, exhausted, not recuperated. Holidays should fill us up. They should slow us down. They should give us January with a sense of, I'm ready to take on my big goals for this year. Yes, they can be busy too, but busy with restoration. When I worked with her, she actually came to work with me in January, but by the following year, we came to the holidays and I was seeing what was going on here. And we had this conversation about slowing down, and the transformation was immense. She had intentional time for recovery and she entered the following January strong, focused. And that January led to her promotion. She was able to show her more great ideas than ever before because she took care of herself over the holidays. I think one of the things I want to ask you all is, what's stopping you from giving yourself permission to slow down? What's holding you up? So many of us have stories about, my family needs this. This is the last holiday I'll have with so-and-so. I have to do this because. But there's a story, and it is a story. I'm going to call you out on it. There's a story you're telling yourself about why you have to give yourself to everyone else over the holidays and not you. I'm not asking you to not do all these fun things. I'm not asking you to not give your kids a great Christmas. I'm not asking you to not spend the holidays with your family. But I'm asking you to make space for you. And so much of the time, we don't do that. The biggest one is, I don't have time to make space. I've got all these things I'm going to do, and I do not have time. Well, then let me ask you this. If nothing changes, how will you feel in January? If you're burnt out now, is it going to feel any different? Are you going to do any better on your goals next year if you go into January after a busy holiday? Then ask yourself this. How do you want to feel in January? How do you want to feel after the holidays? What would it look like to approach rest as an investment in your future, rather than rest being something for the week, which I think we so often tell ourselves? Let me just talk to you briefly about Why? Just basically here, one of the key things you're going to find, if you take the time to rest and restore, you're going to reduce your stress and anxiety, which holidays can be stressful. So what if actually part of what you do is have restoration time simply to deal with the stress and anxiety of the holiday? You will have increased focus, creativity, and problem-solving abilities. And yes, that applies to the holiday season as much as to your work. Now, I'm very focused on the work piece. That's why we're here. But actually, what if you had more focus and creativity to do all the festive things you want to do? What if you had more energy because you slowed down so that when you show up with your kids, you have the energy to give them exactly what they want from you? Another thing that happens when we slow down is improved relationships, personally and professionally, because you are recharged. You're not on that back foot. You're not defensive. You're going to be more self-aware. We know our self-awareness is intimately linked to how tired we are, or rather negatively linked. If you are tired, your self-awareness goes down, which means that when you're getting annoyed with somebody, you don't notice. You just start snapping at them. How many holiday arguments could be avoided by slowing down and restoring? And part of this is stepping away from the constant stimuli. Now, at work, the stimuli are emails. They are all the requests you get. And you may well have permission to step away. Some of us don't. So that's the first thing is, can you step away from all the stimulants of work over the holidays? You might be telling yourself, well, so little comes in over the holidays. It doesn't matter. I'll just keep an eye on it. No. Let's have a break. And there might be stories. There might be legit issues around stepping away. Maybe you have a culture which is toxic, because this is where if you don't read your emails 24 hours, the world is going to end and you're going to lose your job. But most of the time, things are not quite that toxic. And it's about informing your team. Hey, I'm not going to be checking emails. I don't want you to either. Here's how to escalate if there's a real emergency. I want you to remove work stimuli. But I also want you to remove other stimuli. Because when we do this, we create space. We create space without really doing much else. So let go of social media. You do not need to scroll through social media over the holidays. You do definitely not need to be looking at the news over the holidays. Like, believe me, you don't. You'll find out if something bad's happened. And you need to just let go of needing to solve problems for everybody. Which if you're receiving all these communications, you're going to be having to solve problems. You're going to have enough problems to solve with the kids, with the family, with the in-laws. There are going to be problems. Those ones I think are harder to remove because they are part of the holiday. And I don't want you to not have a holiday season. But I want you to remove the unnecessary stimuli, and especially things like social media and email. We get a dopamine hit when we look at them. So we're trained to, I'm tired, I'm stressed, I'll just go check this thing and get a dopamine hit. Oh, somebody sent me an email. Even if it's a negative email, it gives you a dopamine hit. The problem is it's triggering you in some way. It's making you think about things that you shouldn't be thinking about. It's taking away from the space to feel, reflect, and recover. Essentially, what I'm asking you to do is do a little bit of mindfulness meditation by saying, I'm not going to give into this need to scroll or click. Just because it then says, hey, I have to be with my own feelings. I think a lot of the time we turn on the television, we look at email, we look at social media, we look at YouTube, because we don't want to sit with our own thoughts. But part of what I want you to do is to truly restore is to feel. Is to reflect and take the time to recover. If you push those to one side, you're not doing any of that. And guess what? You might sit on the sofa and scroll away and then go to bed. But tomorrow morning, you're going to be in the same headspace you are right now. You're going to be tired, frustrated. You're going to lose your temper with people quickly. You need space to redress your needs. You need space to recognize if you're burnt out. You need downtime to recharge physically and emotionally. And that is not in front of a device that is giving you lots and lots of stimulation. So let's talk about what we can do over the holidays, because it sounds so easy. And yet you're all thinking probably, because I would be thinking this 10 years ago, which is, yeah, but that's great. But I've got all these commitments. Like I've got all these things I need to do. I've got a to-do list coming down my head, across my shoulders, out my elbows. The to-do list is ridiculously long. What do I do with it? So here's what I want you to do. First up, recognize that just like work, you are overcommitted. You will always commit to too much. The thing that stops us at work is, well, I have to go to bed. Or if I say yes to this, I genuinely am going to deliver this 6 months late, right? That stops us. There is a limit of how many hours in the day. What we have to work on with work is realizing, actually, if I work fewer hours, I'm going to deliver more better, more strategic, all that kind of stuff, right? At home, it's the same kind of thing. The reason you've accepted as much as you can is because you think you can squeeze it in. And so many of us have time blindness, where we think we can do more than we can. We say, yeah, that's only going to take me 10 minutes, or I can get across town in 35 minutes thinking I can go to this event and this event and then this event. The reality is that is never going to happen. So you cram so much in because there's fear of missing out over the holidays. You think you've got to do all these things for your kids because they're only going to be young for so long. Or if I don't do this for my parents, what if this is their last Christmas with me? That was my emotional state for a long time with my dad being so sick. And that means we don't create space for us. So the first thing I want you to do is ask yourself, what boundaries can I put in around work, family, and commitments? Where can I create spaces for quiet reflection? And for quiet reflection, I mean space with yourself. Go for a walk without your phone. If you're into it, journaling and meditation are so powerful and will move you forward faster. In my experience, you need less quiet time if you can journal and meditate than you do if you don't. If you don't journal and meditate, you will need more time to restore. You're going to need to be on your own more. But it's also very personal. As an introvert, I need a lot more time to restore than an extrovert. But even an extrovert needs time with their own thoughts and feelings, okay? So I want you to set boundaries and then give yourself permission to say no to some non-essential obligations. And I would argue nothing at holiday time is essential. Nothing. In fact, I would love you to pop over to LinkedIn, send me a DM if you think there is something genuinely essential. Like, what do you think is essential? I really want to hear that conversation with you. Once you've got those boundaries in place and you've got some space, it is about setting the space aside for the good stuff, the inner work. So instead of filling your time with distractions, I want you to ask yourself, what do I really need right now? What does my body and my soul and my brain need? What am I holding on to? What am I distracted by? What am I fearing? What has upset me from 3 weeks ago that I haven't dealt with yet? The holidays are a great time to work through a lot of workplace trauma, the negative conversations you had, the strategy that got shut down, the argument that you overheard when you thought, how does that affect my job? Or the layoffs that you were a part of earlier in the year. This is the time to process that. And so instead of filling life with distractions, I want you to ask, what do I need to work on right now? But I also want you to have that forward-looking lens of, how do I want to feel in January? That's your motivation for doing this work. And it's also an intention. Set the intention for, I'm going to feel excited and energized, or set the intention for, I want to feel ready for the job hunt and aware that I can fulfill great things next year. Or set the intention for, I am ready to up-level myself and demonstrate to the world what I'm capable of. Just this morning, I was talking to this lady who's going to come work with me, and she was talking about how she has never allowed herself to realize that she has so much strategic vision that she needs to be in an executive position. She's not an executive right now, but this woman talks like an executive. She has so many things. She can see why the company she's in, one of the Fortune 25 companies, she can see why they aren't succeeding as much as they should be, why the investors are going, your profit's not as high as it should be. And yet she's not in the position of influence to be there because she thinks she can't. And the conversation we had this morning was, well, why not? And so she has set the intention that 2025 is the year she's going to get her head in what it looks like to be an executive in a Fortune 25 company. And she's going to work her way towards it. So I want you to ask yourself, what intention do you want to set for 2025? What intention do you want to set for how you're going to turn up on January the 2nd? Because let's ignore the 1st. If you're in Scotland, we ignore the 1st and 2nd, by the way. We don't have many public holidays, but you got to love the Scots. We moved a public holiday from Easter to January because we need extra time to recover as Scots. So ignore January the 1st, maybe ignore January the 2nd, but how do you want to turn up in the new year? What intention are you going to have? What mindset do you need to have to turn that intention into success? And then ask yourself, okay, great. What mindset, what do I need to do over the holidays to get myself in that state of intention? I want you to have intentional self-awareness, intentional self-discovery. Use that relaxation time to go, who am I? How do I need to heal? How do I need to move forward? How do I need to get excited? I'm not asking you to plan 2025. We're going to do that next year. I'm asking you to ask yourself, what do the holidays need to give me so I am ready for next year? Rather than, what do I give to the holidays for everybody else, which is what we often do. Once you have this motivation, I'm hoping it's feeling easier to then put boundaries in place. So I want you to have some recovery time every day. It doesn't need to be much. It might just be giving yourself more padding between all the events you're blocking in. And rather than going into the kitchen and making another cake, you go, no, I'm going to take these 30 minutes for me. If you live by your calendar, even over the holidays, which, me, I do that. Even over the holidays, I will be looking at my calendar. I can't function without it. Yes, it's a piece of stimulation, but I don't know what, I just don't function without my calendar. Otherwise, I don't know what day of the week it is, and that stresses me out. So I use my calendar, and I will have blocks in there for me time. You could call them recovery time. You could call them meditation. I don't care what you call them, but time for you to use the tools that are going to help you have those one-on-one conversations with yourself to coach yourself to be ready for 2025. Set the intentions for 2025. Process 2024. Recover, rejuvenate, relax, restore, and let go of the stress. Only then can you step away from burnout or approaching burnout or just being at your best possible self for not just January, but for the kids in half an hour's time. What if by having time by yourself, your kids feel more excited by Christmas because you're in a better headspace? You're less frazzled, you're less angry, you're less frustrated because you are holding all of that. If that's how you are at work, you are holding that. Even if you have amazing compartmentalization, which, as an executive, if you've learned executive presence, hopefully you do. You don't take work home, you don't take home to work, but you've still got to process. And if you go straight from work mode into home mode, when are you processing? And when we haven't processed, it gradually fills up this bucket of, I don't have anything left over. And guess what? You snap at your family. I don't want you snapping at your family. I want you recovering. I want you showing up and being delighted. And then not going, I'm a terrible mom. I'm a terrible partner. I'm a terrible daughter because I snapped. We don't need to do that. But we do it because we haven't rejuvenated ourselves. We haven't recovered because we tell ourselves a story that there's not enough time to put us first. We have to put everybody else first. What if putting yourself first and recovering was actually a way to put your family first because you show up the way they need you to show up? So I want you to be aiming for something big next year. I want you to learn how to restore over the holidays because this is going to help you better manage high stress times without burnout. You're going to be more resilient when you adopt this practice of restoration. You're going to have a stronger connection to your personal professional purpose because you are restored, because you have slowed down, because you've had a moment to think about what you want and what you're going to achieve. And we know if we have strong purpose, we are happier, we are more resilient, we are more likely to be successful. If you don't have a purpose, you are far more likely to get sick. You're far more likely to have bad relationships. You're far more likely to burn out. We all need purpose. But if you don't know your purpose, it's probably because you haven't slowed down enough to say, hey, who am I? What do I do? Why am I here? Purpose can be all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be work related, but what is your purpose? I want you to remember the cost of not slowing down. If you keep pushing through, you don't allow yourself time to recover. Ask yourself, how will this affect you? How will it affect your family? How will it affect your leadership? How's it going to affect your team? How's it going to affect your goals for next year? If you don't recover, what's the negative? And I think so much we don't consider the negative of the status quo. Don't slow down is the status quo. Just keep going, keep going. It's all you know. There is a cost to that status quo. Understand that cost because you're very happy, most of us anyway, to understand the cost of the slowdown. Take a moment to understand the cost of the push through. Remember, resilience isn't built in the tough moments, not at all. Resilience drains in the tough moments. Other things build in the tough moments, like confidence, grit, commitment, but resilience is a resource that's built in preparation. Resilience is a resource that you fill up when you are restoring. It is space to prepare. It is the time needed to understand who you are, what you do, why you do what you do. Resilience is a resource that needs you to be recovered so you can go into those tough moments as resilient as possible and make the best decisions. And guess what? When you do that, your resilience is less drained because you were resilient in the beginning, which means you make better decisions. As you move into the holidays, take a moment to remind yourself why slowing down is important. If you've heard this much of the episode, you kind of get it, right? Remember that it's an investment in yourself. It's an investment in your leadership. It isn't just about you. It's about showing up better for your team, your family, and your goals. And remember, your goals are about people around you, not just you. And then give yourself permission to take this time. I would love it if you can tell me personally. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn anytime about how you're going to slow down over the holidays. And if you're ready to step into a strong 2025, come join me. Book a call with me at any time. Let's talk about what's possible next year. From me and my team, have the most amazing holiday season, and we are taking a break as a company. So there's no podcast next week. We will see you in January, or you will hear from us in January. I want you to have an amazing holiday. I want you to have a restored holiday. I want you to have fun and joy. And of course, as always, stay in your tech leadership game and follow your dreams, because the world really does need that uniqueness that you bring as a Christmassy woman in tech.